It's now 6:30. I'd like to call this regular session of Chardon City Council to order. If you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amy, if you could please call the roll.
Mr. Blackley?
Here.
Mrs. Chuha?
Here.
Mr. Grau?
Here.
Ms. Means?
Here.
Mrs. MacArthur?
Here.
Mr. Molesky?
Here.
Mr. Smock?
Okay, item number 4, approval of minutes. Is there any addition or corrections to the minutes from July 8th, 2021, public hearing at 6:20, July 8th, 2021, public hearing at 6:25, July 8th, 2021 regular session, or the July 28th, 2021 regular session? All right, is there
Motion we approve. Second.
further discussion?
Dan, I wasn't at one of those, so
Did you want me to split them then as
I
far
think
as?
I can't vote yes or no on the blanket, right?
Okay.
Can I, Ben? Or,
So technically, you can.
okay, well then, let it go with that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Call the question?
Mr. Blackley?
Yes.
Mrs. Chuha?
Yes.
Mr. Grau?
Yes.
Ms. Means?
Yes.
Mrs. MacArthur?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes. Item number 5, managers report. Randy?
Yes, good evening. A few things to cover this evening. First is HR. We did make a conditional offer of employment for the full-time maintenance worker position in the Division of Streets, Cemetery, and Parks to a gentleman named Adam Eggleston. Adam has successfully completed all the pre-employment testing protocol and will be beginning his employ with the city on the 23rd of this month. Adam is currently working at the Lake County Department of Utilities and also has served as a maintenance apprentice, so he brings different skill sets to the team, which will be valuable, and we'd like to welcome Adam. Next, the pre-construction meeting took place on August 6th with Roniak Paving for the 2021 street maintenance program. And they'll actually be starting some work tomorrow. They'll be saw cutting on Lost Pond Parkway and down at Woodbridge Lane Crossing. So you'll see them out there working, and then they'll be doing the rest of the work as well. This is regarding a grant that's in process. We're applying for a House Bill 168 water and wastewater infrastructure grant through the Ohio Department of Development for funding of the second 356,000-gallon clear well tank at the water treatment plant. When that plant was originally designed, it was designed for 2 clear wells and 1 was built, so there is a location already set aside for this one. And we had the study done this past year, and this was one of the high-ranking items to do. It'll also help us to be able to position the city, so when we do the rehabilitation of the water tower, we can have the water stored at this clear well. So there's a lot of advantages to this. And we're jumping on, Paul actually is jumping on the opportunity to apply for the state money through the county. The county is ranking it and helping us get the process through. So we're hopeful that it'll come through. We just don't know. Really, it's unraveling as we get into it. There's no set rules and things. It's kind of all developing rapidly. So we don't know if they'll be 90-10 or if they'll cover 80-20 or what it's going to be. But whatever it is, excuse me, we'll reposition the capital improvement plan accordingly so we can use that money and take advantage of the grant. On a lighter, more personal human note, on Thursday, July 22nd, the mayor and I had the honor to participate with a wish-granting organization called A Special Wish Cleveland. And we did this along with the Chardon Fire Department. The mayor presented Lucas Kelling the key to the city for Lucas's valiant efforts to save Spider-Man. And I'll turn it over to Mayor Molesky to elaborate.
Definitely one of my more, I don't know, this is an outstanding thing to be able to have the opportunity to do it. Lucas had such an amazing heart, big smile. He aspires to be a firefighter. Chief Gasper did an amazing job of putting together a program that was extremely special, including they arranged to get him in his own fire suit, and they went and picked him up at his house. They swore him in at the fire station, and then this call came in that Spider-Man was getting frozen in the King Cone truck, and somehow we happened to already be down there at King Cone, and we watched the whole entourage roll in, and Lucas got out and saved Spidey, and we were able to award him a key to the city, and a lot of great photos were taken, and it was really a special time there. So
Really
thanks to the chief and the fire department for putting all that together, and the organization. Randy, you said it was
A Special Wish Cleveland.
right. So yeah, and thanks to all of them. That was really a special time.
One of the notes that I have, which was not in the manager's report, I just wanted to comment on the high attendance of all the events going on in the square. Everything has been super well attended and received. People are out enjoying themselves. It's been wonderful to see. The Friday night concerts are seeing, I think, unprecedented attendance. The Arts Fest this past weekend went very well, and the vendors were extremely happy, so they sold lots of their products, which is very important as well. And the National Night Out went very well this past week when we had that on last Tuesday. So I wanted to see if the chief wanted to add anything on to the National Night Out event.
Oh, sure. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on it. Yeah, Tuesday night, we had quite a crowd for National Night Out. It's a community event that involves crime prevention is the theme. But in Chardon here, we also include the city services. So we had the fire department, the police department, the sheriff's office, a number of other police agencies and city services. Pulse people were there. You had quite a crowd of young people. So we have activities for the kids, including Jungle Theory. The superheroes were there. It was a nice event. We've had a find and seek event where the kids could go and find clues to solve a crime, and door prizes and all kinds of things. So good collaborative effort for the folks that were involved. I want to really point out and thank Rebecca Rapaski from the city and Melissa Leslie from the police department for kind of coordinating and putting the event together and getting everybody at the right place at the right time and in the right mode. And we had a good time. It was well attended, and hopefully it'll be bigger next year. So thank you.
Yeah, it was neat. Another item that was not in the report is we received some tentative potential good news today from NOACA. Remember, we put in a application for the congestion mitigation air quality grant that we had done 2 years ago for the traffic signalization upgrade. It's a 50-50, but we're happy to get any money to help with this project. So we're tentatively, okay, I'll underline tentatively again, please, on the list to get funded is going to the executive committee tomorrow for their vote. And it was about $1.5 million total, with the city share of $750 and a grant of $750. As we receive confirmation of that, we'll let you know, and then it needs to go down to Columbus for their final approval, so there's still steps to get through. And again, the CIP will have to be massaged to fit that project in as we move along. Again, Kevin Westbrooks from GPD is the one who worked with us to get that application in. All right, moving on to the Public Works projects, the Maple Highlands Trail Extension Project, Phase 2, the damaged storm pipe, the water issue we've been talking about the past few months, was discovered that a storm pipe was the problem. And the source of the problem was identified at the trailhead there on Park Avenue and remedied, but the discussions continue about the liability and who has to pay for what as a result of that issue, and then the fix of it. The Chardon Avenue reconstruction and Canfield Drive rehabilitation project, the installation of the storm sewer main and the laterals should be completed in the near future.
It's complete.
Is completed?
Yep.
Is done then, that's good. And the existing sanitary sewer has been televised in preparation for relining, and curb drains are being prepared to installed.
They should be quite a ways along with the curb drains. Yep.
So that project's moving along.
Yes.
And we are putting together an update of where that project is, and the transportation effects that we're having with that project, as well as the work that's gonna go on north, and what we're doing on North Hampden, so we can get that out before school starts, so everybody knows.
Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
We
Everybody
did,
knows.
yeah, we did send it to the school board, and right now, Steve Colville has no issues, and is going to relay the information to the transportation department.
Thank you. And the other project that's going on right now is the North Hampden Water Main Project. And grade line construction started the project on the 29th of July. Work is anticipated to be complete in 21 days or so. And I know that they were doing some work out there today and getting the water turned off and then hooked back up and turned back on. Didn't go quite as planned, but oftentimes things come up that are not anticipated. But I understand there is water now and everybody's back. Any questions regarding the manager's report tonight?
I'd just like to tag one thing on, Chief, if you could give your advice about school starting and driving and paying attention and.
For sure. So this year is every year, it's going to be important that folks that are paying attention to what's going on up around the schools. It's clearly going to be congested. It always is the first week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks of school. So we'll have officers up there from our agency to make sure that people are doing the best they can. It's expected to be congested, so there's going to be, they have to be patient, as best I can say, and paying attention to what's going on.
And if you're in the township, watch for school buses. If you're in the
School
city,
buses,
watch
we'll
for
have kids
crosswalks.
back being picked up and discharged, and we'll be watching for the young drivers, the juvenile drivers leaving the school, or the ones that are tardy trying to
Right.
get there in a hurry. So
Thank you, Chief.
fun.
Dan, if I could make a comment on that same subject, having to do with the schools? Am I out of line?
Yes, if you recognize.
We'll have a spot, well, I guess since we're on the
It's a
topic.
quick one.
Okay,
All of last year and most of the year before, Huntington Street at Goodrich has been backed up during the start of school. School buses back all the way down Goodrich and onto Huntington Street. We've seen cars backed up as far as North Hampden and tying up that intersection. The situation is not good. You can't get out of your driveway if you live on those streets. I would defy you to get an ambulance up either one of those streets during the time before and after school started at our school. I've had conversation via email with the Board of Education and the superintendent. Both of them promised improvement, and if anything, it is the same or worse. I would ask this body to look into it. This is a safety issue, not just an aggravation issue. Thank you.
anyone have any further questions on Randy's report? Okay, moving on to item number 6, Planning Commission. Andy?
Right, so Planning Commission met in regular session on July 20th. It was a one for the record books. We had a full house. Many concerned residents in the East King neighborhood were here to hear the main item on the agenda, which was Planning Commission case 21-110 and 111. Nina Bella Properties was seeking several variances and a conditional use that would have, if they all had been approved, would have allowed them to build 2 duplexes on a vacant lot at 335 East King Street. We heard the testimony from the applicant. We took testimony from the persons in the audience. We actually then adjourned to executive session, which was the first time in 20 years on Planning Commission that I've ever gone to an executive session. But be that as it may, I think we came out at the end with a fair decision. We did grant a variance to allow a non-conforming lot under contiguous ownership to be developed by the same owner. And then we also allowed the conditional use on the one lot which happened to be conforming to be a two-family dwelling. We felt that those two items were the ones that would be most legally defensible. We did, however, turn down their variance request to allow a non-conforming lot to be developed as a two-family dwelling. That was turned down. So I think that all in all, it was a fair decision on the part of the commission, and I applaud their everyone involved, frankly, for being, I think, pretty reasonable and not overly emotional, and I think it went quite well. Then we also heard a informal discussion on the Maple Ridge PRD, which is formerly known as Brooks Meadows. This was going to be done by Summers Development Group. This is a 90-some single-family detached dwelling subdivision immediately south of the woods of Burlington. So the new group came in with a different layout, and I think Commission generally was in favor of it. We told them to proceed with that, and I expect them to come back. I think their goal was to come back so that they'd be able to start construction in next year. They would like to get into this housing market. Steve, do you want to have anything else to add on either one of those items?
Nothing on the East King one, but Maple Ridge, they've formally submitted all their concept plan stuff. We've given them staff's comments. That we should have them back probably sometime next week for the special planning commission meeting on the 31st. So they can proceed to then still be in front of council at the next meeting.
So this is the one that's down by, across from Cleats?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's between the woods of Burlington and the property that the commissioners should be developing.
I know where that's at.
We all do.
That concludes my report.
Any questions for Andy?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to make a comment. Andy's opening statement about a record setting is quite accurate. We were in session for 2.5 hours, I believe. And I just, being on Planning Commission, this is only my 7th year, but this was by far the most, confusing and an important piece that we've done in a long time with the neighborhood that was in attendance. They were well represented, as Andy said, well behaved, but there was quite a bit of dialogue going on. Andy's handling of that meeting was sensational, and it was. We have a really good planning commission. We have some new members, so this was new ground, but we had to discuss a great deal. Steve's preparation for that meeting was also outstanding, and I know it's been a couple of months in the works. So the planning commission really did come together. Our law director played a huge role that night, and we relied on his expertise and his guidance. And as Andy indicated, the result was a fair result. But I just wanted to recognize the 3 people that are here and the planning commission for working together for 2.5 hours to get that done.
Well said, Chris. Thank you.
May I ask a question about some of the dialogue that was happening where there was some opposition to all of the projects or part of them?
Well, I think the main opposition, I mean, our decision hinged on, I think, not changing the overall character of the neighborhood. Now, it was in an R2 district where two-family dwellings are permitted. I mean, I have multifamily houses up and down the street on North Hampden, or some on East King as well. So those uses do exist within the district. But having 2 of them contiguous to each other, we felt would be too much of a commercial look to the area, and that was one of the bases, I think, for our decision. But we did hear all their concerns, and as I say, I think at the end of the day, we reached an equitable solution. And it really did not want to. I think the person who was proposing the development was quite sincere. but we don't know what would happen down the line when they or her parents are no longer around. If somebody else acquired the properties, what the character of that would be like in the future. And law director, if I say too much, tell me to shut up. But so far, so good. Because some of these things are discussed in executive sessions. I can't say too much more than that. But.
So was there, the people that were in opposition, did they seem satisfied with the outcome?
I've not heard from the applicant or any of the neighbors. I haven't heard good or bad.
Yeah.
So, for me, I think they all seemed content. I think all of them were not 100% happy with the way it turned out, but
Right.
they all got a little bit of what they wanted. So it was kind of a compromise in the middle, so.
The commission applied the law appropriately.
Very good.
Well stated.
Enough said.
It should be.
Okay, moving on to item number 7, council committee reports. My understanding is there will be no reports as there were no meetings. Item number 8, hearing of those persons before council, those persons on the agenda. Dean from First Energy contacted us earlier today, and due to circumstances related to power outages, he's going to have to give us a rain check. So
I will say kudos to them. I mean, they were working last night on my street, on Southampton Street. There was a wire down across the street from my house, and they were working there when I went to bed last night. I don't know when they finished, but they had 3 trucks there, and we had a squad down there earlier because there was a wire down. They closed the sidewalk. But
I think yours came back on at 10, and ours on Goodrich Court was midnight.
power?
Yeah.
We had no power interruption on my side of Southampton. On the south side, though, they were out of power. I'm sorry to hear that you were out of power.
No.
yeah, there was a significant number of Northeast Ohio people impacted. It was a pretty amazing storm.
Yeah, that's could have been worse, I think, for Chardon, but it wasn't.
Moving on to hearing of those persons before council, general public, is there anyone that would like to speak in front of council? Come on up. So if you could please state your name and your address for us.
Hello, my name is Kathleen Doyle, and I live at 142 Chardon Avenue. I want to thank the council and the mayor for allowing me to come today to speak about the problem that I see as major in the city of Chardon. I sent out a letter to you via Amy Day. She should have passed it on to you with my own individual issue. For those of you who haven't seen the letter, basically in the year 2004, I had waterproofing and tile footer repair at my property. I hired a licensed, bonded contractor. I pulled a permit and paid the city to inspect the property when it was done. Well, last week, during the construction of Chardon Avenue, they discovered that it was done incorrectly. Now, I have the signed permit from the city inspector that it was done correctly, but they're telling me that now I have to have it redone, incurring thousands of dollars to do this. This week also, I was told over and over, it is ultimately the responsibility of the homeowner to make sure that the work was done correctly. And that is when I realized that my problem was just one part of a much bigger one. So I ask you, council, if I, as the homeowner, as I was told over and over, am the person responsible to make sure the work was done right, why do you require permits and require inspections? Why does the city have us pay for an inspection when it may or may not be accurate, or it may not even be done at all? I paid Chardon good money, in good faith, for the permit and for what I thought would be a quality inspection. I thought if there had been a problem, the inspector would have seen it and would have told them, but I was wrong. Now, this brings me to the topic of city inspection. I did a lot of investigating on this problem. This morning, the man who did it, the contractor from 16 years ago, I finally figured out how to get into contact with him, and I spoke to him. He remembered my job because the inspector came out twice. When they initially went in to put the pipes in to the connecting storm drain, the city of Chardon had no idea where the storm connection was. So they sent someone down to mark the pipe, and he recalls this. Then he said he remembers the second inspection because after they connected the pipe, the inspector was late, and they wanted to backfill the pipe connection as soon as he was done so that I would have access to my driveway. So I had the inspector there twice. According to my contractor, they marked the pipe. And I do remember this because when they couldn't find, when they called the city of Chardon, we were looking all over my yard, even in the backyard, because there's a manhole there. And I said, could the connection to the storm drain be in the back? Now, what qualifications do your inspectors have? What kind of training do they have? And how do you evaluate their job performance and look at accountability? If the city is not policing its employees' performance and also accountability, then they're condoning substandard work. And the person who has to pay the consequences is the homeowner. A suggestion I picked up from the Geauga County Building Office was that perhaps you could have your inspectors, instead of just a cursory signature, perhaps put a notation on the permit, some kind of personal note that would say, this is what I did, this is what I saw. It would cost no money, would take very little time, but it would handle accountability and it would handle job performance. I will be advising everyone getting a permit in the city of Chardon, after my experience, to check out the qualifications of the person who's going to be inspecting it and to be there when the inspection is done. Another issue that came up was when I tried to locate my permit. You see, I called the zoning office, thinking that's where the permit would be held. The gentleman on the phone said, ma'am, we don't have the permit you're describing. I called him back a second time. I said, sir, it has to be there. I know I had a permit. He said, there's nothing with your address. Then I called Geauga County, and they had nothing. Well, thank heavens for Paul Horniak, because in a couple hours later, he had located the 2 permits that weren't at the zoning department. So the next day I called the zoning department and I said, he found the permits, how come you don't have them? And that's when I learned that in the city of Chardon, the water department has some of the permits. The sewer department has some of the permits. Zoning department has some of the permits. And the street department has some of the permits. But they're not all lumped together. Don't you think there would be a way to put all that data cross-reference, even with little asterisks, so that when the homeowner wanted to go and find out what work had been done at their house, perhaps someone who's moving in, they could go to one place and not have to go to each single department, which you will have to do at the current way it's done. In closing, I believe that the city of Chardon has a broken system, one in which the citizens put their faith in it, and then, unfortunately, sometimes it fails them. In doing my research, I discovered that this problem happens more often than you think. I'm not a unique case. Blame is then put on the contractor. The city acknowledges that their employee made a mistake, but you know who pays the price? The resident, the homeowner. So what I'm challenging you today is to look into what's going on in the permit department, in the inspection department, and make changes that make it easier and much more reliable for the homeowner. Take time to become educated, do your homework, and start making changes to a broken system. I thank you for your time. I'm hoping to hear from you soon that you're making changes, that you're going and looking at other aspects. I found all these problems in 2 days. I think if you look into it, you're going to find more. I thank council, and I will be attending council meetings periodically to see what progress you make on these problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Is there anyone else?
We won't fight over it. It'll be okay. Kathy Delaney, 439 North Hampden Street. Have the privilege of being right next door to Thistle Creek. I'd like to know why the residents in my neighborhood weren't notified that you were going to dig up our sidewalks.
We had put a work sign up when this project began. When the project was being bid out, we ran into multiple problems with getting the bids in. And when they did go back in, that sign never went up again. So on behalf of the staff, I apologize. You should have been notified ahead of time that they were going to be doing that work. And when it did happen, we put it out right away once we realized that that wasn't out there.
Well, we still didn't even get a letter or even a knock at the door, which it would have been nice to at least had that much, especially after less than 2 years ago, we went through the point of fixing any cracks in the sidewalks that you tore all up.
I don't know if that project was even a glimmer at that point in time either.
It wasn't. It was not. We typically don't hand out handwritten notices for that type of work. We'll post signs in the location, which the city manager mentioned. This project coincided with Thistle Creek subdivision, but then got off track, and the pre-construction meeting was held at the owner's request, the owner being Summers Development. We're partnered. It's a partnership project with them. And the project started the very next day because all the information that they had been waiting on for months and months and months was finally provided to the city. So, again, on behalf of the service department, I apologize as well. That's not our typical operational practice. We try to put signage up as soon as we know something's going to happen. But in this case, it was within 24 hours from the time of the project pre-construction meeting to the time the contractor was getting on site to take down trees and start their excavation.
Not a happy camper.
Well, question, we don't make contractors hand out a flyer? People that are under contract to us, and pass out a flyer to residents, telling them, giving them, contact phone numbers and things of that nature?
Not typically. In certain circumstances, when their driveway is going to be, when they're going to be displaced from their driveway, when there's going to be public utility disruption for an extended period of time, even a minimal period of time, we require 48 hours handwritten notice by the contractor. But in this instance, we did not.
To that point, though, I get feedback from homeowners about developments, over where they start doing construction and their driveway is, there's cones in their driveways over on, down by King Cone. Like we're talking, I think that the developer could do a better job. The developers could do a better job of making sure they're communicating with the people who live in the neighborhoods proactively so that they know what's going to happen. I know.
Yes, I agree. What I was going to suggest, I'm going to suggest that we have a service committee meeting to discuss one, Ms. Boyle, is that right? Doyle, sorry, Ms. Doyle's issue. I'd like to hear more about what happened there and what we're going to do to improve things. And then also we can talk about contractor notification of residents. I mean, that's standard practice in some places I could tell you about. But
we do use social media to our advantage. Because it's almost instantaneous for those who follow along. We do have a service, Notify Me, where residents and businesses and interested individuals can sign up for real-time notifications, either via text or email, and that is always available. And the notices did go out on that. However, just the typical roadside signs that we put up for the general vehicular traffic that travels the road and the residents of that particular street, they were not put up.
And Andy, I was going to suggest before you did that we have this go before Service Committee because we obviously had a couple gaps here that we need to look into.
Yeah, I don't think it's, from my experience in the city, I don't think these are normal occurrences, but they are hiccups, and I'd like to see us address them and deal with them up front and make any corrections we may need to.
Right, and we can look at root cause and figure out how to make it better.
I will just say that, like, whenever I've called either Steve or Paul about something, like when I hear a complaint or feedback from somebody, not only do they address it immediately, but sometimes, I know with Steve, I've called Steve, he didn't even know what was happening. So he didn't know, and I'll say, hey, why wasn't there flags put up, or why was this happening? And he's like, I didn't know either. So I do think this is worth putting some time to.
Ma'am, were you going to come up as well?
Hello there. My name's Sue Tonkar. I live at 123 Chardon Avenue. Back in 2017, we had to replace our sidewalks at homeowner's cost, which cost me $1,550. I'm a single woman, have a mortgage, I'm paying my bills. They're redoing the pipes in the road. I'm in my bedroom upstairs, I'm looking out the window, they're tearing up my sidewalks. So I go running down, I was like, what is going on with this? So they've tore out probably about 3 or 4 of mine as of right now. The gentleman that is in charge of the construction that's going on stated to me that instead of 4-foot squares for our sidewalks, now they want to put 5-foot in. So 4 years ago, this is a $1.9 million project. 4 years ago, so you can't tell me that they did not know about this. I have a gentleman across the street that put $8,000 into his sidewalks. The one on the corner is $5,000 in sidewalks. This is ridiculous. I was told 4 years ago that do not replace my apron because they're going to come in and destroy everything. So I'm just wondering why, as a homeowner, why did I have to put that money in, as well as all the other residents on Chardon Avenue, put that money in? Now they're tearing them up. And what actually is RETA tax for? Does that go for sidewalks? Does it go for construction? Why am I paying a RETA tax?
The RETA tax, that's the city's income tax. For all the road projects or sidewalk projects, we have a separate fund that every property owner pays into with their property taxes that go toward the sidewalk improvements.
So the RETA taxes I'm paying going for the sidewalk, but then again, I have to pay over $1,500 to put sidewalks in.
And a portion, I should say, of the income tax did go towards the annual repair and maintenance program the last 8 years. But for big improvements and new sidewalks, we have those separate funds set aside.
So I was told once we replace our sidewalks, then the city's in charge of doing whatever, if there's any sort of damage or anything in the sidewalks. Not saying that you're going to tear them up again. I'm thinking a crack in the sidewalk, a dent or something. You're tearing the sidewalks up.
I can respond, if I may. As you said, Sue, that 2017 is when that particular round of sidewalk maintenance was in your section of town. Yours was the 3rd section done. The project, Chardon Avenue in Canfield, was applied for funding in 2019. So in 2017, we weren't sure, and even we had no way of knowing that we were even going to do Chardon Avenue at the time. We hadn't even applied for the funding for it yet.
So it only took 2 years for a $1.9 million project? 2 years, that's it?
It took 2 years.
For the funding?
No, we applied for the funding in 2019. We had no money to do the project. Projects are on the books for some time. This one, I would have to see when we actually finished the drawings, but it's not, we didn't stop the sidewalk program in anticipation of getting money 3 years later. The sidewalk program was started in 2014 and is finalizing this year. As you stated, after this year, residents will no longer be directly responsible for the maintenance and cost repairs of their sidewalks. It'll be borne by the city. So that is about the only explanation I can give to you, and I'm sorry that Mrs. McCarthy, who spoke earlier about the sidewalks on North Hampden, it's the same scenario. The North Hampden water main project that's going on right now wasn't even necessary until Thistle Creek was approved last year. So again, I can understand from your perspective how it's frustrating and how but we don't have any way of knowing. We can't stop something because we're hoping for funding 5 years down the road.
But this has been, I mean, it's been an ongoing issue on Chardon Avenue. I was told, and actually you even told me, this is the oldest street with the oldest pipes.
Yes.
So, I mean, we've talked many a times, and you kept telling me that it's going to get done, and actually you were the one that told me, do not put my apron in. Because the aproners, they're going to be replaced. So why should I pay to put an apron in when it's going to be replaced?
Again,
just as well as the sidewalks.
We do our best to inform individuals and residents and businesses. Once we know, nothing's for sure, and even until then, nothing is exactly for sure until the funding is in place. So there was no way for us to know back in 2017 that Chardon Avenue, it was a project that we knew had to be done in some form. The water line was the main issue on Chardon Avenue. I mean, how many breaks did we have each year?
Many.
A dozen each year. I mean, that was the priority. We were fortunate enough to put together an application with OPWC that encompassed not only the water line, but some storm sewer work, sanitary work, and street rehabilitation along with Canfield. So even back in 2017, the project wasn't as large as it is today as what we're building today. So that's just the truth of the matter. We're not going to stop a project because we're hoping 5 years from now we're going to get funding for another. It's just not how it works, because that project may never come into fruition. If we hadn't have gotten the OPWC funding, we'd still be repairing water line breaks on Chardon Avenue. It would still be the same, and we'd still be applying for funds, because that's the only way we're able to get projects like that done, is with outside funding.
Now, I just feel like I should get reimbursed or at least half of the money back. I think every resident should.
We do the capital improvement plan every year, and it's a 5-year plan, and when we do that, we try very, very hard to make sure that things don't overlap and we don't have these kinds of problems. But due to when we don't know when the grants are going to be awarded or if they'll be awarded, some projects literally go on for decades until they finally get done. So we can't say, okay, this street, just don't do it, because it might be a decade or 20 years until the project actually gets done. But once we get into that 5-year, if we know we're getting the funding, even then we might not know the funding is going to be realized. That project could still continue to get pushed out. So that's why some things, when it happens like this, it's regrettable for everyone, and we have it on our own projects. Something happened and all of a sudden we have to do some sanitary work or storm work on a street that we just fixed. That's the last thing we want to see happen. But
then again, that's not out of the homeowner's pocket. That's my main issue. Thank you.
Any more?
Sure.
Promise to make it quick.
Come up to the podium, please state your name and your address.
Bob Cromwell, 120 Huntington Street. As opposed to a complaint, I'm up here to say, attaboy, attagirl. Moving forward with the IPMC, International Property Maintenance Code, was a major step in the right direction. As some of you may know, there's some issues in our neighborhood, perhaps in others as well. However, moving forward with this and with Steve and Ben's assistance, I can see how this code is going to benefit Chardon for a long, long time to come. Doing the research that I did with other communities, I found that we were way behind the 8 ball. Way, way, way behind the 8 ball. We're not anymore. And I just come up to say thank you. Nice job. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
To your earlier point, to his earlier point that he was talking about the congestion, and you asked us to look into the traffic congestion. So how do we do that?
We're going to have to ask Chief to...
So
see if you, I don't know if you can look and see what's going on there as far as if that's, maybe we'll have to work.
I can tell you exactly what happens there. The school, kids, when folks choose to drive their students to drop them off at school, they line up down the street, and then you couple that with buses, and for the 15 minutes or so, 20 minutes that the students are arriving, that street becomes congested.
I've experienced it myself. You know,
Chief, is this related to the consolidation of the elementary schools?
I can't say that. I can't, I think that it was occurring even before that. I don't think that that helped the situation.
I know it was. All my kids went to Chardon schools. And so
Yeah, I think it's always been congested there, but certainly the consolidation didn't help the situation at all.
Chief, with all due respect, it's never gone all the way down Goodrich, ever. It's spilled out onto Huntington. The photo I have shows it going all the way down to Hamden.
Like I said, I can't go back and say that the extent, I sure it didn't help, but I know that it's backed up there before. Maybe not to the extent that it is now, but certainly the consolidation didn't help the situation.
And I noticed that you probably do, Mr. Cromwell, that the drop-offs in the morning is a lot more congested than pickup. Kids must,
in the afternoon.
yeah, the kids must ride the bus home, because I don't see a lot of traffic.
All the school would have to do is open the door and let the kids get off as they arrive and let them sit there for 15 minutes. It's as simple as that.
So, okay, I guess the question is there anything that we can do about it, or does that have to go back to the Board of Education?
well, there's some
This came up
conflicts,
at a safety committee meeting, I'm going to say 4 years ago, when the consolidation was happening. And I know, Chief, you actually looked at it and I think had discussions with
We've
the
talked to the school club.
But the end result was not much can happen at that point. I don't know if there was a new route being looked at or some sort of, I don't know, release point that, but that's, I know we discussed it and it didn't go.
Yeah, and so there was some discussion about redoing the area around the library and the traffic pattern there, but then COVID happened. So, that's, last year was pretty much a crazy year for all of us, including the schools.
So, as Chief alludes to, there was a plan that Chardon tomorrow put together that myself and Dominic Durante worked on, that we presented to the school board and the library trustees, and they all liked it, but that was pre-COVID, that would greatly expand an area there that would probably accommodate bus parking and drop-off a lot better, far better than what's there now. But that would require a lot of cooperation between those two entities and some help from the city. So, and Chardon tomorrow is in no condition right now to do much else with that. So, if this is something that we want to see happen, the city may have to pick it up and run with it.
Is that something to bring back to safety committee then?
Probably a good place to start with,
Yeah, I mean,
Chief's direction.
I would agree if there's some emergency or whatever, that'd be hard to get to it.
well, this is happening 5 days a week, right?
That's it.
So,
Well, we haven't seen it this year, and there may indeed be a miraculous new plan that alleviates the whole thing.
School
But
starts
the
in
last
a
2 or
week.
3 years.
Wednesday, so.
Chief, I have a question about the middle school, because did they not change the way their traffic pattern works for dropping off? They don't allow it anymore?
They did, and it's been probably 3 years now, but that involved, they put an entire new parking lot into the north of the building there. That they expanded the parking lot that was there significantly, which allowed them to put a lot more cars in off the street. And then they rerouted their morning and afternoon traffic to come in either Canfield or Maple Avenue and come down through the high school and down the Alcan to pick the kids up in the afternoon. And even that backs up to some degree.
Andy, we'll talk about getting that data from Chardon tomorrow, and then Chief and Heather will get together on a safety plan, or safety committee meeting and get the school involved. I'd like to get the school involved as quickly as possible, and then, I'm concerned about, I don't know whose statement was, but no ambulance access during those congested times.
No way. I'd be happy to attend that safety committee meeting. And bring
I don't
people
get anybody's
photos.
hopes up, but there's only so much we can do if the library and the school board don't cooperate, then there's nothing, basically nothing we can do about it.
Andy, come over and take a look. The buses come and park, and they park, and 10 minutes later, they haven't moved. All they have to do is take those kids off the bus, move the traffic through the parking lot.
We can't solve it.
We'll have to involve the school.
Yeah, we
because
have to work with
they have
them.
elements to them.
You're asking us to do something, so we're gonna try to do something.
Thank you. I appreciate it a lot.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak before council? Okay, moving on to item number 9, old business. There's no old business on the agenda. Item 10, new business. A, consider all liquor permits set to expire October 1st, 2021. Ben, can you help us with what this process is?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. State law provides that the council itself has the right to object to the renewal or the issuance of a liquor permit. Any new liquor permits or renewals that are set to expire, you can object if you're so inclined to do so. I've received no reports or indication that any of the permits that are set to expire or the renewals have been any problems or there are any grounds for objection.
Chief, is there anything specific we should be aware of, that you're aware of?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have a specific objection?
I'll make a motion that we approve all liquor permits set to expire October 1, 2021.
Good to do that?
No, but it's okay.
Okay. Further discussion? Call the question?
Mrs. Chuha?
Yes.
Mr. Grau?
Yes.
Ms. Means?
Yes.
Mrs. MacArthur?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Blackie?
Yes.
Item B, consider new DH5 liquor permit for Thrive Performing and Visual Arts at 101 Water Street. Ben?
The Thrive has an application for a liquor permit, and we are entitled to object to it if we are so inclined to do so.
Anybody have any objections? Okay. Item C, set a public hearing to provide the public an opportunity to comment regarding a proposed amendment to the approved concept plan for Maple Ridge PRD subdivision, formerly known as Brooks Meadow PRD subdivision. And we're asking if you're available on September 9th at 6:20, which would be before our regular session meeting in September. Does that work for everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone have, looks like everyone's okay with that?
I'm sorry, was that already a scheduled meeting?
Yeah, our meeting's at 6:30. This would be 10 minutes prior. Chris, you good? I'm good. Okay. All right, moving on to item D, consider authorizing the city to act as a fiscal agent for the Chardon Fire Department's application for the American Recovery Plan grant. Randy, can you introduce this for us?
Certainly, I'd like to welcome Captain John Blah to the podium. John contacted me on Monday, and we spoke. He's actively working on a grant for the fire department to apply for federal funds for a lot of different pieces of equipment that I'm sure he'll go into. And the grant would require the city to act as the fiscal agent for them. I think kind of similar to what we've done in the past for the Habitat for Humanity when they apply for some vehicles. But we don't have the details yet, so we need to iron all that out. But John wanted to take the opportunity, since it was this week, to come speak to council and let us know and get your feedback. Thank you, John.
Hi, folks. basically, all I'm doing is letting you know that because we're a contracted entity, the city would need to acquire those funds because they can't come to a private entity through the COVID-2 or American Recovery or Rescue Plan or whatever we're going to call it this week. This particular plan is mostly for replacing existing equipment. The LifePack 15 that we use, it's a monitor defibrillator, pretty high tech, has lots of whistles and bells on it, and they're adding whistles and bells on a almost yearly basis now. The version that we have of that device is now going to become relatively obsolete because they're having trouble getting specific parts. I have a feeling that both the COVID electronic issue as well as changing the configuration of the equipment to do more, like I said, more whistles and bells, means that we're either going to have to stop having a maintenance contract with Stryker Physio Control, which makes the unit, after this next year, or we're going to need to go to a version 2, which is kind of where this comes from. That monitor defibrillator, its retail cost is roughly $40,000 per unit. If we do, that's the reason that I'm coming to, is if we do this way, they will give us a 50% off of that, and then all of that 50% cost would be covered completely by the American Recovery Plan. After talking to them, they also let me know that our stair chairs, which is a device that lowers you down your stairs, it's got kind of a tank type track on it. It's pretty smooth. Those we bought in 2003 and 2006, they've pretty much seen their useful life, and so we went to them and said, all of the Stryker Physio products that we have, what are the chances that that would all be covered? They pretty much said they thought all of that would be covered. So this would include defibrillators, stair chairs, automated external defibrillators, as well as the compression thumper device, the chest compression device, which we call Lucas. We have 2 of those. Those retail for about $16,000 each now, and those would also be covered. So we would end up getting roughly $78,000 worth of new equipment from that American Recovery Plan. So we just need basically you folks to think about whether you're willing to be our fiscal agent in order to receive those funds.
Matt, have we done this in the past?
In some respects, as the city manager had mentioned, this might be a little bit different. I'm not sure if the city would have to expend the funds on behalf of the fire department, or if we'd have to enter into a sub-grant agreement with the fire department to cover this. So we'd have to just review the act, the eligible uses, to make sure all of this stuff fits and works, and that we know who's responsible for what.
Stryker actually has which is the company that has now purchased all of these companies. They have a grants professional that does this particular thing frequently for agencies like us, and that's kind of, to get the ball rolling. I would get her in touch with you folks, and that way you could figure out, number one, whether it's doable for you, and number two, how to do it the right way.
So Ben, could we, I guess, just so make sure we're covered in this, could we have a motion to authorize Randy to work on the details and move forward with this if it's, I don't know, maybe you would be better with the wording than me. So why don't you start speaking?
Well, procedurally, I think the city manager can do this absent council's authorization. However, the buy-in from the legislative body is always nice. So perhaps it's just a simple motion authorizing the city manager to exercise his discretion in whatever way he sees fit to support the fire department's application.
That sounded better than mine. Is there anyone who wants to
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
It wasn't shorter. I have a question.
Nothing I do is short.
Is this time sensitive?
The 50% discount program is in through September 30th of this year. I found out about this Monday. So that's the reason for my call to Randy and the like. So I've sent him the necessary information. He and I and this grants person can go from there. So I'm not sure how sensitive, but it'd be nice to save either us or the government as much money as we can so that some other department could benefit from that.
Any further discussion? Call the question.
Mr. Graw?
Yes.
Ms. Means?
Yes.
Mrs. MacArthur?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Blackley?
Yes.
Mrs. Chuha?
Yes.
And we thank you for support of the fire department. We appreciate it. Absolutely. Well, that's why we're here.
Okay, moving on to item 11. Legislation, item A, this would be the first reading, is would anyone like this read in its entirety? Hearing none?
An ordinance declaring 100% of improvements to certain parcels of real property to be a public purpose, describing the public infrastructure improvements to be made to benefit those parcels, requiring the owners of the improvements thereon to make service payments in lieu of taxes, establishing a Redwood Chardon Municipal Public Improvement Tax Increment Equivalent Fund for the deposit of such service payments and related matters.
So is there, then should we?
We can discuss it. If you'd like me to discuss, we can discuss, but other than putting on first reading, there's no action council needs to take.
Okay.
Your choice. You run the show, sir.
So I think we'll stick with the first reading and move on to item B. Would anyone like this ordinance read in its entirety? Hearing none?
An ordinance amending Section 521.11 of the codified ordinances of the City of Chardon to allow the city to enter on private property to remove nuisance litter.
Is there a motion to read this by title only for the second and third time?
So moved.
Further discussion? Call the question?
Ms. Means? Yes. Mrs. MacArthur?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Blackley?
Yes.
Mrs. Chuha?
Yes.
Mr. Graw?
Yes.
Motion carries. Number and read it, please.
Ordinance number 3174. An ordinance amending Section 521.11 of the codified ordinances of the City of Chardon to allow the city to enter on private property to remove nuisance litter. Ordinance number 3174. An ordinance amending Section 521.11 of the codified ordinances of the City of Chardon to allow the city to enter on private property to remove nuisance litter.
Is there a motion for the adoption of ordinance number 3174?
If I'm right,
So moved.
Second?
Further discussion? This would be Steve.
Good evening. This went to Legislative Committee, I believe, last month. Basically, what this is, we have a nuisance ordinance in the city, one that's for grass and litter. There's a whole process laid out for what we can do to do nuisance abatement for high grass and cite the property owner, and then ultimately if they don't do it, we could abate the nuisance. That same, myself and the law director were kind of going through the code, that same process isn't allowed for the litter is included there, but it's not allowed for the litter. So this is just to clean that up. So if the problem arises that we have a nuisance abatement with litter, whether it's trash along the bike path or a commercial property that needs cleaned up in the back, that this would allow us to contract with a company similar to the way we do grass, and then we would go do it, clean it up, and send the bill to and put it on their tax duplicate.
And this is, the time frame then is faster?
Correct. This is the 7-day warning, 7-day violation. Then we would contract to do it, just like the grass.
Any further discussion? Is there a comment you had, Bob?
I had come up to talk initially to strongly suggest that this be adopted. I've come to find out that it's more a formality than anything else, so I won't bore you with that part. As I read this ordinance, though, if I could make a couple of suggestions. First off, Steve, you mentioned commercial property. This will apply to private property as well? Homeowner property?
For trash litter, this is any property in the city, yes, just like
Okay.
grass is.
We have listed here vehicles, wagons, furniture, grass, oil, petroleum products, blah, 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 or any item of an unsightly or unsanitary nature. What's that? Is it unsightly to me? To you, Ben? To Dan?
So, thank you for your comments, Bob. I don't know that we're going to the whole thing.
And I think there's one other thing that ought to be on here, and that's providing a habitat for rodents. You can put all kinds of personal property in a pile in the back of your house, and perhaps not have it qualify as rubbish, ashes, glass, oil, or whatever. But I can tell you from personal experience that I'm being overrun with rodents. And you can name whatever rodent you want. Gophers, raccoons, squirrels, rats, mice. And I can tell you where they're coming from. I can also tell you there's a deer living in that backyard in the high grass.
So let me ask.
How do we?
So if he called the city and said, hey, my neighbor has X, and as a result, I'm being overrun by rodents, would the city go out and address that under this?
So, just to be clear, that definition's been in the code for years. The only amendment is to subsection G, which authorizes us to enter onto the property at that point in time. So conceptually, all we're doing is giving us the authority to enter onto that property
Right.
if the violation, if notice is served and compliance is not achieved.
Okay, so what I'm just asking though separately is, if I call up because I feel like that's, that somebody has something in their yard that's creating something like rodents in my yard, or does the city address that? If we get a call like that?
We would go investigate it as best we can, because we cannot go onto private property. So we'd either have to see it from a adjacent property or the public right of way.
Okay, so what's the homeowner's recourse then? What else could they do? I think that my neighbor's causing this in my yard. What do I do? What else can I do? What he's saying is that this is a problem that's happening in his yard right now.
Yeah.
So what are his options?
A private homeowner, a private property owner has two remedies.
Right.
There is a private cause of action among and between private citizens to address nuisances.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can bring a private cause of action as a homeowner against another homeowner.
Okay.
That exists entirely independent of the city's legal obligations to enforce what this body puts in place as its laws.
Mm-hmm.
You've put in place a law that effectively allows for the city to enforce or prohibit the placement of nuisance on a property after notice and an opportunity to be heard on the issue.
Mm-hmm.
So you can fight it out amongst yourselves, or if there's a potential violation of the code that the city determines is appropriate, we will serve notice on the person who's alleged to have be in violation of the code. They'll be given an opportunity to be heard, to challenge our findings, and thereafter the matter would either be resolved through them either coming into compliance or them presenting evidence to the contrary of a violation. So there's a process that has to be in place. We, as the government, can't go onto anybody's property for any reason whatsoever. We, as the government, can't take things from people's property without any reason whatsoever. We have to give notice. We have to give an opportunity to be heard. Those are constitutional rights afforded to everyone, whether their property's in tip-top shape or they don't even go to their property. Those are just the obligations and your constitutional rights as a property owner in America. The nuisance provisions, and this section of the code aims to cure immediate and challenging health, safety, and welfare considerations. It's a different universe than the IPMC code, although the IPMC does allow for much of the same process. The reason this is separate is because when the city enacts pursuant to this statute, we have the immediate ability to assess our cost on the tax duplicate, and we can do that on an ongoing basis once the violation has found to exist and the violation is not cured. We don't need to go through that process on a repeated basis. It's a one-time thing, we've shown it, we're gonna come back and we're gonna cure it every time the violation props up.
However, and we've talked about this a few times, we can't go on that property to confirm that that's what's going on. And in this case, the pile of trash, which includes old tires, chain link fence, sections of wooden fence, and God knows what all else, when given the opportunity, they put a tarp over it. And they hide it. So Steve can't see it. Tarp is blown away here of late, and you can see what's there.
So, I don't know what else we're supposed to do.
I'm not sure there is anything else you need to do.
I mean, there's only, right?
So
what we're saying is there's only so much we can do.
Code provisions that contemplate all of these things. But we, as the government, can't do everything. There are constitutional rights that the private property owner has that we have to respect. If we don't, we'll get sued and we'll lose.
Right, so we're exhausted, we've done what we can do. In this specific.
This is a piece of
I
legislation, this is a separate issue.
I understand, but I'm just trying to address what you're saying, which is we've done what we can do. You have recourse, personal recourse that you can take, and at this point, what else do you want us to do?
That's why I ask what constitutes litter. This thing says unsightly and unsafe. It's my conjecture, my position, that a pile of old fence, tires, and God knows what else is in that pile of high weeds, is unsightly and unsafe. If that is what you're going to accomplish tonight, I applaud you. If this is nothing more than, gee, we can't do anything because we can't see it, are you wasting your time tonight?
I think there's a conceptual difference between the provisions that we're talking about in this situation and some of the other code enforcement provisions. When you're talking about tall grass and litter of this nature, the law provides that those recurring offenses extend and do not exist within the bounds of any one particular property. Tall grass and weeds, for example, the fact that they exist and the fact that the wind blowing causes it to go across other people's property means that there's a free range of movement that requires us to act immediately. So new litter, same way. Wind's going to blow litter. It's going to go from place to place to place. We have the ability to go and abate that immediately. The tarped structure is not going anywhere. And so although if there are rodents within that are entering on and exiting upon, that's a different, the structure versus the moving object is a distinction that gives us the ability to take more aggressive action like we're doing for this litter provision.
Okay, so this is strictly litter. This isn't going to help us otherwise.
I would say it's going to help you for litter. The definition that council enacted for litter years ago is quite broad. I'm not certain it's quite broad.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry to hold up your meeting for so long.
Well, couldn't you call the Board of Health? I mean, if you really think it's a sanitary problem? I think, would the County Board of Health have jurisdiction in a matter like that if there was a rodent population?
Or animal control?
In the case of South Euclid, I was told that they go get a search warrant when they suspect something like this is going on.
This ain't South Euclid.
Any further discussion? Call the question.
Mrs. MacArthur?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Blackley?
Yes.
Mrs. Chuha?
Yes.
Mr. Groff?
Yes.
Ms. Means?
Yes.
Item C, item C, would anyone like this ordinance read in its entirety? Hearing none?
An ordinance repealing section 131.02 of the codified ordinances and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to read this by title only for the second and third time?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Call the question.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Blackley?
Yes.
Mrs. Chuha?
Yes.
Mr. Groff?
Yes.
Ms. Means?
Yes.
Mrs. MacArthur?
Yes.
Motion carries. Number and read it, please.
Ordinance number 3175, an ordinance repealing section 131.02 of the codified ordinances and declaring an emergency. Ordinance number 3175, an ordinance repealing section 131.02 of the codified ordinances and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion for the adoption of ordinance number 3175?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. That would be
That's me, Mayor.
Randy.
First, I'd like to start with, there's a correction on the second whereas both the safety instead of service. Committee and council approved the changes. And this is just housekeeping from the changes that were made, recommended by the safety committee to council in both May and June, when we adopted the new part-time patrol officers and part-time police dispatchers, the amounts that they'd be paid for the uniform allowance. It rendered this particular code no longer valid, so it's just rescinding this code and taking it out of the ordinance.
Is there any further questions for Randy or discussion? Call the question.
Mr. Blackley?
Yes.
Mrs. Chuha?
Yes.
Mr. Graw?
Yes.
Ms. Means?
Yes.
Mrs. MacArthur?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mayor, just one extra correction, as Randy indicated, this safety committee versus service committee, but that's also represented in the first paragraph. So just a minor.
It's in the first and second, yeah.
Oh, yep.
Deb caught it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on to item D. Would anyone like this read in its entirety? Hearing none?
An emergency resolution to accept the material terms of the One Ohio subdivision settlement pursuant to the One Ohio Memorandum of Understanding and consistent with the terms of the July 21st, 2021 National Opioid Settlement Agreement.
Is there a motion to read this by title only for the second and third time?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the question.
Mrs. Chuha?
Yes.
Mr. Graw?
Yes.
Ms. Means?
Yes.
Mrs. MacArthur?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Blackley?
Yes.
Motion carries. Number and read it, please.
Resolution number 14-21, an emergency resolution to accept the material terms of the One Ohio subdivision settlement pursuant to the One Ohio Memorandum of Understanding and consistent with the terms of the July 21st, 2021 National Opioid Settlement Agreement. Resolution number 14-21, an emergency resolution to accept the material terms of the One Ohio subdivision settlement pursuant to the One Ohio Memorandum of Understanding and consistent with the terms of the July 21st, 2021 National Opioid Settlement Agreement.
Is there a motion for the adoption of resolution number 14-21?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, Ben?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a significant piece of legislation and one that's born out of a lot of hard work from a lot of people over a number of years. To make a very long story very short, the three major distributors of certain opioids have reached a settlement with a nationwide class of political subdivisions that will result in approximately $829 million being paid to, in this instance, the state of Ohio and its political subdivisions. Those monies are going to be paid over the course of 18 years. In order for a settlement to take place, a minimum threshold of political subdivisions have to pass legislation in support of the agreement and in support of the settlement. That minimum threshold is 70%. Nobody had much notice that this was coming forward, but we got it on the books, and the city is poised to receive, depending on participation and approval, they're set to receive $67,599.22 if the minimum threshold is achieved. If the maximum threshold is achieved, they could get up to $96,570.32 on their first base payment. Over time, and with participation throughout the state, more funds might become available to the city depending upon a host of factors that are relatively complicated. So the first step in us potentially securing that fund is we have to pass this legislation and agree to participate. Thereafter, if the threshold is met, the distributors have the opportunity to discuss and object or approve the settlement. And if they don't, or they do, if they do approve the settlement and we move forward, the distribution will be made in relatively short order. Those funds are earmarked for very specific purposes related to the opioid epidemic, and we'll have to work through what the appropriate expenditures are with the finance director. We don't get there until we pass this legislation, and we need enough people in the state to do the same. It's my understanding that a number of municipalities have done so, and I think we need to as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ben? Call the question.
Mr. Craw?
Yes.
Ms. Means? Yes. Mrs. MacArthur?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Blackley?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, item E, would anyone like this ordinance read in its entirety? Hearing none?
An ordinance awarding the 2021 sidewalk repair in Fifth Avenue and Washington Street infill sidewalks to DPD Construction and Engineering, LLC, and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to read this by title only for the second and third time?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the question?
Ms. Means?
Yes.
Mrs. MacArthur?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Blackley?
Yes.
Mrs. Chuha?
Yes.
Mr. Craw?
Yes.
Motion carries. Number and read it, please.
Ordinance number 3176, an ordinance awarding the 2021 sidewalk repair in Fifth Avenue and Washington Street infill sidewalks to DPD Construction and Engineering, LLC, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance number 3176, an ordinance awarding the 2021 sidewalk repair in Fifth Avenue and Washington Street infill sidewalks to DPD Construction and Engineering, LLC, and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion? Let's see. Sorry. This would be Doug.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hang on, Doug.
Just need a motion to adopt first.
Yeah.
I thought I did that.
Do we need a motion from the floor?
Oh, yeah. Is there a motion to adopt? I'm sorry. Forgive me. Yeah, I got a little tied up there. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance number 3176?
I'll second it.
Further discussion. Doug, there we go.
Thank you.
Now we're back on track.
On Friday the 6th, we received and opened 4 bids for the project. Bids ranged from 6.6% below the estimate to 9.1% above the estimate. The lowest and best bid was submitted by DPD Construction and Engineering. This will be the first time they've worked in the city of Chardon. I checked on the references. They've had the sidewalk and apron repair and maintenance contract in Shaker Heights for the last several years. So I spoke to Shaker's city engineer and a representative from their service department who runs their sidewalk program, and both said very good contractor, very clean and efficient, and does good work. Had no issues with the contractor, so we're recommending award to DPD Construction and Engineering.
Any questions for Doug?
Can you describe where this sidewalk's going to go exactly?
So, east side of Washington Street, opposite Chardon Custom Polymers for about, I'm going to say half of Washington Street, because I think that sidewalk that comes up from the post office stops about halfway down. It might be a little more than halfway. And then it's going to wrap around and go up Fifth Avenue, the south side of Fifth Avenue, and connect to the existing walk that's already on Fifth. So.
That'll be nice to have it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It wraps around Fifth, right?
Pardon?
Wraps around Fifth.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Call the question?
Mrs. MacArthur?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Blackley?
Yes.
Mrs. Chuha?
Yes.
Mr. Graw?
Yes.
Ms. Means?
Yes.
Item F, would anyone like this ordinance read in its entirety? Hearing none?
An ordinance amending appropriations in the City of Chardon Treasury for 2021 and declaring.
Is there a motion to read this by title only for the second, third time?
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Call the question?
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Blackley?
Yes.
Mrs. Chuha?
Yes.
Mr. Graw?
Yes.
Ms. Means?
Yes.
Mrs. MacArthur?
Yes.
Motion carries. Number and read it, please.
Ordinance number 3177, an ordinance amending appropriations in the City of Chardon Treasury for 2021 and declaring an emergency. Ordinance number 3177, an ordinance amending appropriations in the City of Chardon Treasury for 2021 and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion for the adoption of ordinance number 3177?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, Matt?
Thank you, Mayor. This is intended to set aside a budget for addressing potential demolition costs of structures on Karen Drive and Fifth Avenue related to not complying with code and also what's going on through the court system. So we're just setting aside funds in case that does go through. And as a part of the process, in the memo that is in council's packet is a threshold recommended for when, or if this does occur, the city can assess those demolition costs back to the property owner's taxes. And I try to come up with a threshold similar to the sidewalk maintenance and repair program, because in an effort to be practical and think through that, these costs won't be repaid in 1 year, more than likely. So the thresholds that are recommended are costs up to $4,999.99 would be distributed over 2 tax years. Demolition costs of $5,000 to $9,999.99 would be distributed over 4 tax years. Costs of $10,000 to $14,999.99 would go over 6 tax years. And anything over $15,000 or more would be gone over 8 tax years. 8 tax years is the maximum we set in the sidewalk repair programs. That's why I tried to mirror that. The costs are much higher because of the nature of the demolition costs. And I will defer to the law director to see if council should adapt those thresholds via a motion if you agree to them.
A motion is appropriate.
So should we do the motion separate from the ordinance then? Or should we do it now in the middle of this?
We just do it now.
Do it now. Okay, is there a motion to adopt those?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Further discussion? Anyone want to ask questions of Matt of them, or we're good? Okay, call the question.
Mrs. Chuha?
Yes.
Mr. Graw?
Yes.
Ms. Means?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Blackley?
Yes.
Are there any further, is there any further discussion on ordinance 3177? Call the question.
Mr. Blackley?
Yes.
Mrs. Chuha?
Yes.
Mr. Graw?
Yes.
Ms. Means?
Yes.
Mrs. MacArthur?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes. Okay, that concludes legislation. Moving on to item number 12, review of expenditures. Nancy?
Yes, I reviewed the expenditures and everything looks great.
Excellent. Item 13, executive session. Is there a need for executive session? Yes, there is. To consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, conferences with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are subject of pending or imminent court action. I'd like to invite into executive session City Manager Randy Sharp, Law Director Ben Chinaki, Finance Director Matt Ragonjek, Clerk of Council Amy Day, and Majid Maklouf of Burns, Ochner, and Greensburg LLC via Zoom. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Discussion? Call the question?
Mr. Grau?
Yes.
Ms. Means?
Yes.
Mrs. MacArthur?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Black?
Well,
Seats open.
yeah, but there's such a small portion of Honey Valley and Jaga. There's like
Okay, the
25
time is
registered
9:04, and we are back from executive session.
It's weird.
Item number 14 on the agenda, any other business to come before council?
Last concert Friday night, tomorrow night. Well, that we're sponsored.
Concerts in the park are, yeah, wrapping up, right? So this will be the last one from the city.
Pool closes.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's sad.
But the Square Association is sponsoring, I think, 3 more
Okay.
Right.
during the market. Market's still going on Saturdays, but they're continuing the 3 concerts on Friday nights. And then the market actually is going to continue for 2 more Saturdays.
Yep. So you can still get, I'm popping popcorn the last Saturday, or last Friday for the concert, so yes, all the way through, so folks can still come.
Okay, excellent. And then just a reminder to everyone, be careful as school starts back in session on Wednesday, the 18th.
And did we want to set a special meeting?
Yeah, we need to set up a special meeting for, goodness, that's going to be Saturday, August 21st at 8 a.m.
That sounds good.
That will be our date for our special meeting. Does anyone have anything else? Item 15, adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor signified by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise? It is 9:05 and we're adjourned. Thank you.